Yo, what's up, guys? Uh, After some requests, I'm going to do a deck tech for the Eldrazi deck, and we'll start off with the lands. Um, 22 land count. The I've broken them into different kind of categories of what the lands do. You'll see this here is it's got 11, so about half the lands in the deck are trying to um, specifically produce more than one mana, which most lands do one, but these are trying to do two or even more, um, and to layer in to an extent as well. Um, so we've got the full Urza package. So Planar Nexus, Urza's Mine, Urza's Power Plant, Urza's Tower, Urza's Workshop um, as the additional mana producers, and then also Urza's Saga and Urza's Cave to round out the actual lands that have the Urza subtype. Um, these five are pretty good at producing additional mana. All you need to do is get the planar nexus, and then each of these turns into a soul land. And Urza's Workshop can sometimes produce 4 or 5 mana in the mid to late game, so worthy include for sure. Um, there's a few ways that you can search up additional lands. So a lot of this deck is trying to facilitate a 2 land combo, whether that be Nexus plus Urza's Tower, Deathspin Stage plus Dark Depths, even Yavimaya plus Iovugan produces 4 Eldrazi mana just with 2 lands. Yeah, that's kind of the goal, and then a lot of the lands just make mana otherwise. So in conjunction with the right lands, they can be pretty broken, and in general, your mana base is pretty functional otherwise because you don't really have much in the way of color requirements. Um, so that's what these Tron lands are for. Ancient Tomb, there's a spare point, so any colorless soul land is welcome, so that's an easy include. City Traders, I'm pretty happy to play 8 points, so definitely an include as well. Ugin's Lab is an interesting one. There is, let's have a look, I think 4 or 5 pitchables to it. One, two, three, four, five. Yeah, 5 pitchables for Ugin's Lab. So it's not going to be a soul land that often, but when it is, it's the best one. It doesn't have any drawback. Sometimes it's an upside if you're getting Thoughtseize, you can hide your Emrakul or your Ugin or whatever away behind it, so that's quite valuable. And yeah, the flaw for the card is that it's just a colorless land, so pretty exciting. Eldrazi Temple, in the Eldrazi deck, you get access to another free soul land, and so Ivurgen, to a similar vein of thinking, is the same, whilst also functioning as a late game engine. Um, if you have heaps of mana, the inevitability of getting your best Eldrazi each turn and casting it is almost unbeatable. So really nice that you have lands that function as soul lands, normal lands, and then this also just has a late game engine attached to it. So the mana base is really quite appealing about the Eldrazi deck. It's probably the best thing about the deck is that you get to play 12 lands that can produce more than 2 mana. Well, Planar Nexus excluded because it facilitates the other ones, but 11 lands that make 2 or more mana. That's not a lot of decks. Well, actually, I don't really think there's many other decks you could make that would get a better soul land count than this, and that's really what we're trying to abuse with this deck. Um, the next section of lands is like more utility lands, so Seagate Refuge, Talon Gates of Madara, Urza Saga, and Beseiju, who endures. Seagate was the last land I included, but it's still a reasonable include to just kind of fill up your hand if you run out of gas. And this deck mulligans pretty aggressively and has a lot of fast mana, so often you can just dump out your hand pretty quick, and then paying 4 mana to draw a card, whilst it would usually be bad, is not too bad when you've got heaps of spare mana floating around, so that's nice. Talon Gates is a bit of interaction, bit of ramp, bit of protection. It's a very diverse and kind of like toolboxy card that you can make any color with it. You can make colorless. You can phase out your own thing. You can phase out their blocker. You can phase out a Thalia to get some non-creature spell down, or like phase out their lock piece. and then it can also just function as 4 mana, put a land into play, which can be effectively ramp. So really unique, and because of that powerful effect. Saga, one of the next points, so point 2 of 7, is, I mean, everyone's played with this card, they know how good it is, and the density of artifacts in this deck is high enough that I'd struggle to see why you'd ever cut it. Also good to just be able to pivot and go off of big Eldrazi into just smaller artifact creatures, or it's kind of a game plan in and of itself, and there's enough ways to search up Saga in the form of Urza's Cave, Expedition Map, Sowing Micro Spawn, and Golos that it's just a great include to have a one-man army to get off of any of those 4 cards. Beside you really just need to have a bit of a green count for all the green spells. So beside you is the best utility land that's also untapped green land, and good utility to interact as well on an access that you wouldn't usually be able to do at instant speed in a colorless deck. So happy to have beside you. 1 forest as a concession to opposing Besaidu's and initiative. That's enough. I think 1 basic's fine. You can play 2 if you wanted. Gemstone Caverns, colors isn't that bad, and being able to take the play from your opponent is unbelievably powerful. So another good include. Good thing to note with Gemstone Caverns is since you are trying to put together like usually two specific lands, like my example earlier with Nexus and a mine or a tower, you've got a lot of cards in your hand that don't really support your game plan. So you might have a good ramp hand that's got a Dark Depth in it, and it's just kind of out of place and not very good. And you can just Gemstone Caverns, exile it, and go about whichever game plan you wanted to enact with that hand. Yavimaya is just another green source that lets your Dark Depths tap for mana, your Cradle, Tolarian, and Ivugan. These all don't tap for mana outside of certain circumstances, so being able to turn them into mana-producing lands is pretty good, and green sources are always welcome. And then the Thespian Stage Dark Depths, as I said, you're trying to assemble 2 cards so often that sometimes you just have a hand that's got Thespian Stage and you've got an Expedition Map, and you can just pivot into making a 2020 flyer in your Eldrazi beatdown deck. So you've got a lot of angles of attack thanks to this 2-card include. And like Stage is just a fine card to copy pretty much any of these lands that aren't legendary, and Dark Depths is pretty awkward a lot of the time, but the power level and the number of times I've drawn this and been happy to have it in the deck is definitely outweighing the number of times I've drawn it and been sad to have it. And honestly, sometimes you get to 30 mana and you just make it 2020. So yeah, happy to play them. As I said, these 5 cards here, or these 4 cards, all facilitate getting whichever lands you need. The Candelabra is just a means to untap all these doubling lands. So any land that makes 2 mana, you get +1 mana if you have a Candelabra to use on it. So if you have 2 soul lands, your Candelabra is essentially netting you 2 mana. And if you have a Tolarian, you're making ridiculous mana. It can go pretty out of hand pretty quick. So happy to include it. These 8 cards here are kind of like the artifact mana package. So you have a lot of your mana production and power in your lands, but it's also good to be able to, if you get Blood Moon, you can pivot away from that and rely on your artifact mana. So a lot of games I've played where I had land, Soul Ring, Talisman, and they Blood Moon me on turn 2, and I just couldn't care less, and I just continued on about my day and played a Smasher and just beat them up. So being able to kind of split your mana power, or the power of your mana base over your lands and your artifact mana is really quite a good reason to be playing this deck. So to facilitate the artifact mana, we've got Tolarian Academy as the 3rd point. Jewel Amulet, Mox Opal, Soul Ring as points 4, 5, and 6. Mana Vault as the 7th point. Talisman, 2 green talismans, and a Grim Monolith. This has been about the right number of artifact lands or artifact mana producers that I've been wanting in the deck. You don't want to go too overboard with it because then you start getting caught up by things like Brotherhood's End or Null Rods. You kind of get collateral damage from the bot's sideboard cards. So relying a little bit on your artifact mana, but not too much, is kind of the spot that I'm finding you want to be in. So that's why I've included these. I found 2 talismans to be sufficient to make sure you have enough green sources for your green spells. You play the blue one because it helps you cast Null Drifter, and you play the black one because it helps you cast Dismember. That's all there is to it. The next section is, I would call it deck minimization, just cards that mean you have less cards in your deck. Starting with less cards is the benefit. You see your better cards more often, so Jit Probe, both Baubles, and probably just those 3 kind of just cantrip for free. They're pretty good, and the Baubles also double time as ways to enable the Tolarian draws or cheap color spells to help other cards we'll see later on. So all these ways to just make your deck quickly just kind of churn through things and get a bit of velocity. These are good cards. Once Upon a Time is good to also back up as another way to find your 2 card or 2 lands that you're trying to find or put together. Same for Ancient Stirrings, and Serum Powder's just, you have a lot of hands that don't have the 2 lands you're looking for or don't really have any good artifact mana, so you just want to mulligan quite aggressively, and Serum Powder helps you do that. Next section, we have Matter Reshaper, Eternal Scourge, Thought Knot, and Reality Smasher. These don't really have much of a section. They're just Eldrazi creatures that you need to fill out the deck. When you're playing Eldrazi Temple and Eye of Ugin, you just need to have Eldrazi spells to make the most of them. Reality Smasher and Thought Knot are pretty good. Eternal Scourge and Matter Reshaper not so much, but I've found you just want to be able to cast something off of your soul lands, and Matter Reshaper is serviceable when it often effectively costs 2 mana thanks to having a soul land. So, and Eternal Scourge can be pretty annoying against Grixis decks if they need to kill it. So I've been happy with them, but they could honestly be cut at some point. These 5 cards, being Glaring Fleshstriker, Hit That Heralds the End, Ugin the Ineffable, Eldrazi Repurposer, and Forsaken Monument. These are kind of your mid-game ramp cards. So in an Eldrazi deck, I'm guessing the first card you think of when someone says Eldrazi is Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn, the biggest, baddest creature in Magic. It costs 15, and a lot of the good Eldrazi do cost 10 plus. So you kind of need some way to stem the gap between making 3 and 4 mana and making 10. So cards like Ugin reduce cost by 2, Forsaken Monument doubles all your lands and artifacts. Glaring Fleshstriker over a few turns can produce several spawn that can help you power it out. If that Herald's the End also works with like the other spawn, but helps reduce cost as well. And Repurposer can just make 2 Scions to help you get there. So these guys are kind of the mid-game stuff that you want to see to get you to the bigger things, and kind of gum up the board until you get there. These 3 cards, just quickly, we got Misstep, Dismember, and All Is Dust. The 2 best Phyrexian answers, no reason not to play them, and since your colors, you kind of choked on what kind of interaction you have got access to, so definitely happy to include both of these. And then All Is Dust, I opt for over... I like to have one of these kind of effects in the deck instead of this plus Ugin, the Spirit Dragon. This is the better one given it's a Kindred Eldrazi, so you've just got more ways to cast it a bit quicker. But the Ugin is in the sideboard to clean up those mid-rangey matchups. These 3 are clearly just interactive. These other 5, which is quite a big number, they kind of all serve multiple purposes and also interact. So Kozilek's Command gets graveyard, it's card advantage, it kills things, and it's a ramp spell. So incredibly versatile. Eldrazi Confluence kind of fills those same roles, kills things, makes scions, and gives you a bit of interaction in the form of flickering. Ballista is early interaction or late game mana dump. Yeah, another great interactive card that's good late, good early. Same could be said for Devourer. It's a big threat, it's removal, and it also helps make a lot of opening hands keepable. And then Khan is, well, it's whatever's in my sideboard, so it's very versatile as well. So whilst this deck looks quite straightforward, very just tap all your mana, play your biggest thing each turn, you've actually got a lot of options in these 5 cards to play the game how you want to play it, which is nice out of a colorless deck, which wouldn't often have that many options. I've been playing a lot of artifacts in the past, and it doesn't really offer you the same options that this deck has. You just play your biggest thing most turns and kind of attack, but this deck can play a bit of a controlling game when you've got a hand that's got a Dismember and an Eldrazi Confluence. So yeah, it's interesting from that aspect. The next 4 are the big hitters. You've got Mystic Forge, Null Drifter, Ulamog, and Emrakul. You don't want to go overboard with these 10 and 13 mana cards, respectively, when we're playing a format as quick as Highlander, but you can very realistically get to these, and it's pretty hard to lose a game when you cast either of these, so happy to include the 2 of them. Null Drifter it could almost go into this category where it's a threat. It's a mid-game kind of like thing that lets you get to the next turn, so just 3 mana divination. It's pretty bad, but sometimes that's what you need to kind of keep the ball rolling and get to the next turn. And then it also has a bit of like evasion, annihilator, yeah, so it's somewhat versatile there. So you've got enough big boomers to take down the game once you do get all your mana together. So that's the deck. Moving on to the sideboard. A bit of, yeah, quite a lot of different axes that you're trying to attack on with the sideboard cards. They probably fall into a few main categories. I'll put them up now. Liquid metal coating and microscintillators are just Karn targets purely. When you resolve a Karn, these are the best single cards to be getting with it, and your sideboard options in colorless aren't that good, so you don't mind losing 2 sideboard slots to make your Karn a little bit better. Then after that, you've got a lot of combo cards. As a big mana deck, you're usually weakest to combos, so I would say these 7 cards are designated as anti-combo. Anything that's trying to cast a lot of spells, Trinosphere is good against. Torpor Orb works double time against Flash and Thoracle, but also has the opportunity to stop Turbo Initiative decks in their tracks, so worthwhile include as well here. Worth noting, a lot of the Eldrazi are cast triggers, so this isn't too much, it doesn't impact you too much, except for like Golos and Thought-Knot-Seer that get turned off by it. Otherwise, this is premium sideboard card. This Kozilek is a strange one, but it's really just designated for combo as well. If you play it, dump your hand, and then draw 7 cards, you'll probably draw 2 or 3 lands, a 1-drop and a 2-drop, and one other thing, which means you can counter a 1-drop, a 2-drop, and any zeros from your combo opponent, and then you kill them next turn with probably 1 hit from the Kozilek. In most games, I would say. So if you draw the right CMCs to counter things with the Kozilek, then yeah, it almost shores up the game for you. The curve is actually, despite it being quite large with all the big Eldrazi, there is a lot of 1s and 2s, so yeah, it is good to interact with that third ability given the curve. Chalice is another card against combo decks. Gravediggers against Reanimator, and Storm, Breach, anything like that. Relic, pretty much the same as Gravediggers, a bit less pointed than Gravediggers is, but still very effective at what it does. And Vexing Bauble is usually comes in similar matchups, also just cycles, so it's good to have these Relic and Vexing Bauble as lock pieces that sometimes you just need to cycle away and keep yourself going, because it is a big mana deck and you do need to just sometimes draw a card instead of having a lock piece if you've got multiple. Just gives you more options there. The other options in the sideboard, we've got Ugin for the mid-range matchups, Breaker to beat burn decks, or sometimes I do bring it in against combo decks. If you're playing Thoracle or Breach, one attack from the Breaker, killing 2 of their lands is usually going to be game over. So 8 mana, killing the next turn is sometimes serviceable depending on what you want to cut. And then you've got a bit of interaction, more creature interaction in the form of Contortion and Wastecape Battle Mage. And then Wastecape Battle Mage also doubles as a artifact or enchantment hate, which these 3 take up quite nicely. So Haywire Light, Thief of Existence, Wastecape all take care of artifacts or enchantments. So against bots decks, you've got a bit of love there. And yeah, that's pretty much the deck. Hope you like it. I hope you're sleeving it up and giving it a try. I know a few people have been talking about it and saying that they're enjoying the deck and think it's really good. Always open to feedback on the deck if you've got any suggestions or there's anything I didn't talk about that you'd want to know more about. Always happy to discuss down in the comments. And I'll talk to you guys next time.